Howdy folks, this is Checkers back again with another Fallout 4 video, here today with a bit of a combo deal. Someone asked me to do a video showing what happens if you don't leave the house at the beginning of Fallout 4. Well, the short answer is nothing. Nothing happens if you stay in the house. The bombs don't fall, the war doesn't really start. Well, I guess it starts, but it doesn't come to Sanctuary Hills. So, that's pretty boring if we just sit on the couch. So what I thought I would do is bore it up even more by talking a bit about my experience of the gaming market as it's changed over the last 40 years. I started playing games in the 1970s, and I've seen it change over the 4 decades since, so I thought we might talk about that. So if you are ready to yawn yourself to pieces, buckle up, strap in, and here we go. We open the door and start a war.
Followed by flashes, blinding flashes, sounds of explosions. We're trying to get confirmation.
What?
We seem to have lost contact with our affiliate
Oh,
stations.
honey, he just said that we're going to die in a rain of nuclear fire.
We do have coming in. That's confirmed reports. I repeat, confirmed reports of nuclear detonations in New York and Pennsylvania. My God.
Oh my God.
We need to get to the vault now.
I've got Sean. Let's go.
Oh, yeah, honey, you know what? I said that I was going to go to the vault, but I lied. I'm just going to sit here on the couch, just kind of stretch out here with Codsworth, and talk about games. So there is Nora out on the sidewalk, well, in the grass. Couldn't even stand in the sidewalk, could you, Nora? And, well, there's Codsworth, there's our couch, and there we are. So, first part of the video here is basically the first concept to show that sitting in the house here, basically, you will not die in a rain of nuclear fire. The bombs will not fall. The war will not reach Sanctuary Hills. To make sure that the video stays entirely boring, I will add my commentary about gaming over the last 40 years. So let's get right on into it. I started out in gaming in the 70s on things like coin-op, tabletop games, where you would go into sort of a restaurant and there would be like a Pong table where you could put your money in and you could play Pong with the person across the table. And, you know, they would serve your food on the table as well. I also myself had a console called a Bally Arcade that was released in the late 1977, early 1978. So a contemporary of the Atari VCS, what is now known as the 2600. But I also had friends who had consoles that only played Pong. It was just the only thing that it did. So in the early years of gaming, you were lucky if the console you had at home could do more than one thing. And even if it could do more than one thing, the odds are there weren't very many things for it to do. Back in these days, there were only first-party games. In other words, only the company that made the console was making games for it. And, well, they weren't really quite quick about it. Eventually, companies like Activision, the original Activision from way back when, would try and edge into the Atari VCS market, and they did with games like Pitfall. But still, even with now third parties coming in, and in PC gaming, games were always third party. IBM, if they did make games, I don't know of any of them. So PC gaming was always the place where third parties could get their games in. Consoles were always the place, usually where the first party, the manufacturer of the console, was the primary manufacturer of the game. So you have many more consoles and many more players than you have games to play. And in these early years, in these early decades really, say the 1980s and even into the 1990s, there are really more players than games. In the middle 1980s, I went from console to Commodore VIC-20 to a Commodore 64, and then in about 1986 or 87, I got myself into an IBM PC clone, and so it was an 8088 processor and had an amber screen, and I think my very first game was Wizardry 4, but the very first game that I fell in love with was Might and Magic, the original Might and Magic, which was kind of a first-personish perspective party RPG. Very turn-based. It wasn't anything like a shooter. It was just, from your first-person perspective, you were moving through hallways and fighting monsters and solving puzzles and riddles. No auto map. You had to hand map everything. Oh, it was good times. And I actually have a video where I talk a bit about it. Anyway, in these early years, even though I loved RPGs, there just weren't that many of them coming out. So you could go months or longer without another RPG to play. Because of this, I picked up many other kinds of games, things that I may not normally have even thought about or tried. Actually, there was no concept of thinking about which genre you liked. There were only games. And, well, I tried just about everything I could get my hands on. Flight simulators, and there were a couple of games I remember. The Ancient Art of War and The Ancient Art of War at Sea by Broderbund, I think. And there were some Starship Command type games like Starflight. And I think I got my PC in maybe late 87, early 88, and I was playing Starflight, which was from 1986. So it tells you about how often the tempo, how many games were being released at the time. There was another one that I really loved. It was called Star Command. It was from a company called SSI. But in these early years, these early decades, there are far more players than games, and there is also a sense of adventure in both gaming and in developing, I think, as the developers try to convert their ideas, their thoughts of how you might play something like D&D, or how you might be a starship captain, into a game. Because there were no rules. There were nothing like these things before that. There was no previous example. So there was no Starship Simulator before the first Starship Simulator. There was, no role-playing game before the first computer role-playing game. As the years have progressed, we've moved into a place where we assume a game is what it is, simply because that's what's gone before it, but that is not necessarily true. And I think in a lot of ways we miss out on that pioneer spirit because we are still on the frontier of entertainment here. Now, I come from 20 years of working in entertainment, in theater. That's theater with a stage, not theater with a movie screen. And I've also worked on movies and music videos and commercials and things like that. But games, to me, are truly, right now, the frontier of entertainment. But we are in danger of falling into the wagon ruts of the games that have been made before. And we don't have to be that. We don't have to do that. This is still very much a medium where the imagination can take hold and create new things. Just because other people have made Starship Simulator games that behave a certain way does not mean that's the only way they can be made. The question is, are you as a developer the kind of person who can explore that new way to be made? Imagine that no one has ever done the kind of game that you want to make before. Just erase all that previous information from your mind and try and imagine how you would do it back then in the 1980s and the 1970s at the very frontier of gaming. You might find yourself with something really interesting. Now, there is another dark side to the way the market has changed. As we moved into the 1990s and the 2000s and on past 2010, there are now so many games in the market that just because you are a developer or a publisher and you have made a game, you have absolutely zero guarantee that your game will sell. And even if you are a major AAA publisher and a major AAA developer, and you have, let's say, a first-person shooter that has an incredible track record of sales, if you don't do it exactly right, you can find your franchise falling on its ass. So, this is no longer the point of just being mighty and wealthy and winning. You need to do it right. You need to do it with thought, and you need to have a little bit of a wild side. The reason being that simply replicating the past is not enough anymore to make something worth purchasing. We already have enough of that. We already have a library of games that can be replayed without paying for them all over again. So if you don't bring something new to the table, if you don't bring something exceptional to the table, you have a very good chance of leaving the table empty-handed. It is 2017 now. I don't have to worry about whether or not another RPG will be released within the next month. I don't. There are so many RPGs on the market right now that I don't even have to buy RPGs that have a single feature that I dislike. I can ignore them completely. That puts a lot of pressure on development and on publishing, because making the game alone is no longer a promise of selling the game. In 2004, Blizzard launched the World of Warcraft. Now, the World of Warcraft is not by far the first MMO. It is not by far the first-person or /third-person MMO. It's not the first of what it had done. Even if you want to ignore the past of games like Ultima Online and Meridian 59 and EverQuest, EverQuest 2 launched something like 15 days before the World of Warcraft. What Blizzard did with the World of Warcraft that made it gobs and mountains of money was they made it exceptional. They made it exceptional to the point that it was something that you really wanted to play. It wasn't clunky. It was, if you look back on it now to what it may be now, but it was not as clunky as its contemporaries. And so it was accessible. I don't mean accessible in dumbed down. I mean accessible as in, wow, that looks like a good thing. It looks like fun. It looks like something I can learn to do. Let's roll. It was exceptional. That is Blizzard's stock in trade, is to take something and make it exceptional. Make it something that people want to play. It may not be the newest thing. It may not be the first thing, but they make it so that you want to do it and you want to play it. However, World of Warcraft did a couple of things to the market. One, it made people chase its golden tail. And so many companies wasted so much money, so many resources, chasing something they could never catch because they were trying to chase the wrong thing. They thought they were chasing a style of game. They didn't look to realize that the style of game had existed for years before that. Mainly, it seems, because the people who control the money for gaming developers and publishers don't really play games themselves. And, you know, that's kind of a bit of a detriment, guys. You should really know about the market you're dealing with. This is not selling a winter coat. You sell a winter coat in the summer, you can expect not many people to buy it. You sell a winter coat in the winter, it's cold, people will probably buy it. Games don't work that way anymore. The game market keeps changing, and it will continue to keep changing. So, in 2004, companies start losing their minds and trying to chase the ultimate dream of a WoW killer by making another WoW. And they all, without fail, fail. The other thing that Warcraft did to the market starting in 2004 was they scared off just about everyone else. For at least a year or two, games that should have succeeded failed because the player base that they were aiming for was all firmly ensconced inside of World of Warcraft. It made a big impact on the industry. It was exceptional. Everyone was chasing the what instead of the essence, that essence of exceptional, nature. If you want to succeed wildly, like Warcraft did, you need to be wildly exceptional. You need to have a bit of wild in you. If you don't have that, if you don't have passion and a deep love for what you're doing and a deep belief, you're just being average. And that's the best you can hope for. And in this market today, being average is essentially being invisible. You might be noticed, and you might not. People bump into invisible things, and sometimes they get noticed that way. And sometimes they really don't. So, if you're a modern day developer, if you're a modern day publisher, and you want to succeed, believe in what you're doing. Believe in it as if it were the most important thing, the most passionate and lovely thing you could do. And you might stand a chance. If you just want to kick in a 9-to-5 job, you should probably not expect to have a great deal of success. That seems to be where the market is going. And as it floods more and more with more and more indie games, and if you don't believe it's doing that, please, I invite you, go look on Steam's recently released tab and see how many things came out just on the day you watched this video. You'll see the sea is flooded, and it's flooding even higher. If you want to succeed, if you want to do well in this market, you need to be exceptional. Whether that's an exceptionability of having some wild new idea or just quality control and exceptionally fun gameplay or exceptionally quality construction, that's up to you and the market. But being average is probably not going to be quite enough. And with that, and oh wow, almost 19 minutes of sitting on the couch here, we can pretty much say beyond a shadow of a doubt that the bombs are not going to fall on me. I am not going to die so long as I remain in the house. I will just sit here with Codsworth until the power runs out, or, well, my PC just keels over. And that's not going to be fun for either of us, so I think it's about time for me to say that this has been Checkers. And if you look in the upper right-hand corner, you will see a small letter I with a white circle around it. These are cards and links to other videos that I've made. Also, I have a Twitter link in the description of the video and on my channel's main page. If you're on mobile, it'll be on my channel's About page. I would like to thank you for watching. I hope you found the video entertaining and maybe just a little informative. I would like to invite you to subscribe, like, and share if you so desire, and to ask you, above all, to please take care.